Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for joining this session today on Safe Workplaces Dialogue by Locky Beater, which is a monthly discussion series focusing on key aspects of workplace safety and compliance. So, this session basically on Safe Workplaces Dialogues, it features HR leaders, compliance experts, legal advisors, and thought leaders who will share their insights, discuss challenges, and provide actionable strategies to help you build a safer and a more compliant workplace. Myself, Ipsita Mishra. I work as a senior in house counsel at Lockheed Beater, and I'll be the moderator and facilitating today's discussion on the topic navigating mandatory PoSH Act requirements and annual reporting. So, as we all know, that we are heading towards the end of this year, and so the discussion regarding the annual reporting under the PoSH Act 2013 becomes all the more important. The PoSH Act on annual report, it states that the annual report is not just a mandatory requirement, but it is a very crucial tool to assess any organization's commitment to prevent sexual harassment and to create a safe and respectful workplace. The Act also mandates that every organization must submit an annual report to the district officer and the employer. So, in today's session, what we will do is we will be guiding you through the mandatory compliances under the PoSH Act, including the importance of timely annual report submissions and other best practices. So, we have an exceptional panel of experts today with us who will share their insights and practical advice on PoSH compliance. Let me introduce you to them. Joining us today are Monica Arora. So, she is an HR and organization development consultant. She has over 17 years of experience in leadership roles in IT, fintech, and BFSI sectors. She's also a coach, ACC ICF, a facilitator, and a certified PoSH enabler. She's very passionate about enabling organizations to foster a safe workplace culture for all. Welcome, Monica.
Thank you so much.
Next, we have with us is Priya Bhatnagar. Priya is a PoSH practice head at 3GB Solutions. She has an experience of over 18 years in various roles of HR, internal and external communications, project management, operations, transformation projects, and training. As PoSH enabler, she is passionate about creating safer, respectful, and gender neutral workplaces. Welcome, Priya.
Thank you so much, Ipsita. Great to be here.
We had another panelist with us, Subodh Singh, but since he's down with fever, he'll not be joining with us today. So we have Monica and Priya with us. Now, setting the stage for today, our goal today is to clarify the key compliance requirements under the PoSH Act, which will emphasize the importance of submitting the annual report timely and other mandates that are very helpful for creating a safe and respectful workplace environment. We'll cover several areas like PoSH policy, the mandatory requirements or features under the PoSH Act, and also discuss about the annual report submission. Towards the end, we will open the floor for an interactive Q&A session with the panelists also. So now moving ahead to round number one. Round number one is basically about building the foundations of PoSH compliance. So let us now begin by understanding the basics of PoSH Act and its mandatory requirements. Monica, I'd like to start with you basically first. Could you walk us through the mandatory compliance under the PoSH Act?
Hi, everybody, and hi, Ipsita. Thank you so much. Okay, so the PoSH Act is primarily about three main pillars, right? One of the pillars being prevention, prohibition, and redressal, right? So it will be a great idea to break all the mandatory compliances under each of these three pillars so that we can throw light on each of these and understand these pillars better. When it comes to prevention, organizations are required to create awareness to prevent harassment at the workplace. And this includes conducting regular PoSH awareness workshops for employees and specialized training for the IC committee members, which is very important. Displaying awareness posters and policies prominently in the workplace so that everybody is aware of the existence of the consequences around sexual harassment and the existence of a committee. When it comes to prohibition, companies need a robust anti-sexual harassment policy, service rules that explicitly prohibit sexual harassment at the workplace and ensures ease of access to the same by everybody. And this policy must outline behaviors which are considered as harassment, the rights of the complainant, the steps involved to raise the complaints, right? That's the prohibition pillar. When it comes to the redressal pillar, basically that's the heart of the PoSH compliance for any organization. And establishing an IC committee, that is the internal committee, is mandatory for organizations with over 10 employees, as we all know. Constituting an IC committee is mandatory under the Act, and there are certain mandatory requirements around the composition of the committee as well. So that is one of the aspects of the redressal mechanism. Conducting regular IC committee meetings once in a quarter is what is recommended. Adhering to the mandated timelines, which is recommended in the Act for each of the steps, starting from the time you receive the complaint to the time you complete your inquiry, and of course, around maintaining confidentiality. And last but not the least, filing of the annual return, reporting it to the district officer is again one of the important aspects when it comes to the redressal mechanism. So I've tried to touch upon each of these three pillars in the shortest manner possible.
Okay, thank you, Monica. So I have a follow-up question for you also. Could you shed some light on the importance of posters regarding PoSH in the workplace?
Certainly. Well, as per the PoSH Act itself, there is one of the sections which says that it's mandated that every employer or the internal committee of the company display the penal consequences of sexual harassment and about the constitution of the IC. It aligns with the prevention pillar, of course, of the Act. And posters are the easiest and the most economical way of doing it, by putting them up in places that are most frequently accessed by everybody. Such awareness posters are constant visible reminder of workplace safety and to a great extent offer psychological safety net for all. Well, while awareness can be created through regular sensitization training sessions, quizzes, communication via emails or intranet portal, which is easily accessible by the employees, we cannot forget that the Act also covers visitors. And that could be candidates who come for interviews, it could be vendors, it could be even clients. Also, there may be contractual staff or interns or trainees who may not have access to emails or to digital platforms such as maybe an intranet portal offered by the company. So, a lot of organizations put up posters not only in cafeteria, canteen, pantries, reception area, but also in interview rooms and, if possible, even in elevators, which helps in creating awareness amongst the visitors as well, right? So we are covering not just the employees, but also visitors. It makes them aware of the existence of the PoSH policy, existence of an IC, and the consequences. And also through posters, it's very easy to create awareness, do regular communication, mainly in the area where the organization senses that more awareness is needed. And the best way of leveraging on the posters is to constantly keep on changing the posters, the taglines, etc., which attracts attention of the people looking at it on a regular basis. So yes, posters do play a very crucial role.
Okay, any idea, or any insights on like if workplaces are remote, then how to go forward with the posters? Like if virtual
Uh,
workplaces are there.
Virtual workplaces, of course, we have to leverage on the technology. So you could, if employees are using mobile applications, then push messages could be sent. See, because the purpose of the posters is to what create awareness, right? So when employees are working remotely, we have to leverage on the technology available, be it through your mobile applications, through your intranet portal, regular email, messages being sent out to employees, and reminding them of, the consequences, the redressal mechanism, and all of it. So I think when it comes to remote workforce, leveraging on technology is what comes to me as the most effective way of doing it.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Monica. Moving on to our next panelist, Priya. My question for you, Priya, is what are the key elements to include while drafting a PoSH policy for an organization?
Okay. So, firstly, thank you very much for the opportunity to talk on something very important as conversation and dialogues around safe workplaces. I think it's always been a need of the hour, and it's important to have such open dialogues. And coming to the question, so before I touch base on the key elements, I would like to just take a couple of minutes on discussing about why policy at the first place, as a mandate by the government, or why a institution is supposed to have or is advised to have. So government mandates typically policy, if we understand, especially around sensitive issues, to protect the fundamental rights, right? And like a right to safe and dignified workplace is typically a default which should be there. But as we all understand, that is not the case at many places. So hence, there are interventions which have to be devised, and mandates policies is one such interventions that has been mandated. Making it a legal requirement again ensures consistent standard within the institution, which can be maintained for all. And it's just not about avoiding lawsuits. It is also about prompting a cultural shift where respect and safety is prioritized as a society. So and of course we should not be forgetting that mandating policies also hold companies or organizations, institutions accountable. So pushing them to take real actions rather than just doing lip service to the idea of building any kind of workplace or adhering to something. So having said that, as a context to why policy, I also get questions in many training that when the awareness level in certain people is more that why a mandate, shouldn't it be like a default, because such respectful and a safe behavior or a culture or environment is expected within institution or people. However, we all know the world is not an ideal place, and it comprises of all and everybody. So having a sexual harassment policy, it's crucial because it sets an expectation for behavior, a kind of a behavior, and provides a clear framework.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, sorry, Priya. Do you want to add anything else?
Yeah, so I was just adding that this being the background, that there has to be a fair process in place, and policy does help in that. What's acceptable, what not, it helps employee feel protected, right? And stay, of course, legally compliant, because these are mandates from the government. Coming back to your question, now that we know that what has been the context and why a policy typically should be there and as mandated, let's look at some key elements which are must included. So I'll talk about two parts, probably a must include and something which I usually see missing in while I review policies, right? So I'll touch base on that in the second half. Some of the inclusions that should be there as key elements are definitions in line with law for sexual harassment workplace. What is the definition of a workplace? In the context of post-COVID virtual and work from home scenarios, that has also been included and should be included as part of the policy. So one of the important key element being, definition in line with the law for all these important terms. Then pronouncing it as a grave misconduct, one should clarify the stance for a zero tolerance within the policy. It helps the organization clarify its stance that such kind of misconduct or behavior will not be acceptable, and follow it up with clear consequences or disciplinary action, in case of there is any breach. So clear penalties for violations need to be stated. Then, of course, as Monica touched base, internal committee being a very, very important part, again, other than the policy, needs to be there. A clarified structure needs to be there as mandated by the government, because that forms the key, and people need to know who are the presiding officers and where and how to make the complaint. So a clear structure in IC, the complaint procedures need to be clarified as key elements, and the inquiry timelines for sure. It helps give much more clarity to individuals as to whom to reach out, where to reach out, and what are the timelines, so that there can be red flags, if there are any, can be spoken about. Then, of course, confidentiality remains a very, very important clause within the law. So we need to have clear mandates or elements around what do we mean by the confidentiality. What are the instances that, can be made exceptions, if there are any, though there are no exceptions to confidentiality, and only the probably in media, etc., even if the cases are bigger, then only the judgment, if you see, typically needs to come out, and not the identity and exactly what the case is. And then, of course, the remedial measures that we talk about. So these are some of the key elements that should be there. Having said that, some of the elements that we see and we recommend as practitioners to build a more robust, policy, it should include the interim measures for sure, what the organization should take and support the victim with. If what are the handling scenario for any anonymous complaint, because there have been instances as you see that there was no clarity and there have been anonymity and the organization doesn't know how to handle it. So typically there has to be a scenario handling for it, if there's included, if there are exclusions. As suggested, or as we would suggest, anonymity has no place in it, right? Because then you can't apply a principle of natural justice. So usually anonymity exceptions, exclusions, and inclusions should be mentioned. Then the appeal procedures, and of course, the bystander intervention is very important, because we collectively as organization, build. It's not just about the victim or the respondent. It is about what the organization is empowering, even people who are watching. So bystander intervention, how are they protected, all that also could be important part or element of the policy. And of course, if the organization needs to make it gender neutral, then that is definitely suggested. So these are some of the elements which I feel makes a policy more robust.
Thank you, Priya. Thank you for the wonderful insights. Now we will move on to our next round, second round, that is reporting for accountability, the annual report. So we will discuss here about the often overlooked but very critical aspect of PoSH compliance, which is the annual report submission. As we know that the PoSH Act, it establishes the internal complaints committee, and it states that every organization is supposed to or must submit an annual report each calendar year to both the employer and the district officer. So, Monica, the question is for you basically. Who is responsible for the PoSH annual reporting, and what are the effective data collection or organization methods?
Thank you for the question, Ipsita. Well, annual reporting is, as we know, one mandatory aspect when it comes to the, PoSH governance and act. The responsibility of PoSH annual reporting lies with the employer and as much with the internal committee, not just the presiding officer of the internal committee, but every member of the committee. So by 31st of January of every year, the IC must submit the annual report to the district officer as mandated under the act. Well, a quick trivia, IC used to be called as ICC earlier, which was the Internal Complaints Committee, but it got changed to IC over more than 2 years ago, mainly on the recommendation of the Ministry of Women and Child Development, because IC's role is not only for complaint handling, but to prevent, prohibit, as well as redress the complaints, So the role of IC goes beyond complaint handling, and one of the important responsibilities they carry is the annual reporting bit, right? To answer the second part of your question with regards to effective data collection and organization, there are a lot of organizations now adopting centralized complaint tracking system, which was not possible or not even available a few years ago. But thanks to organizations such as Lockubator that offers, such complaint tracking system where organizations can maintain a secure system to log complaints, to track timelines with due date reminders, also to document the resolutions in a templatized manner, giving role-based accesses to IC members, mainly from the perspective of, maintaining confidentiality, which even Priya spoke about, recording the minutes of the meeting, and so much more can be achieved through, a centralized complaint tracking system. It makes it easy to retrieve case data, when preparing annual reports. Also, we spoke of posters, right? So, I was just thinking if, is it possible for organizations to adopt a QR code based posters where the posters can state that if you wish to log a complaint, a sexual harassment complaint, scan this QR code, which then directly directs them to an appropriate link or a page where the complaint needs to be logged. So that's another creative way in which posters can be leveraged upon, and linking it to the centralized complaint tracking system. And there are organizations that still rely on manual filing system. So for them, probably one starting point could be using a checklist of activities, documents, timelines that IC members can use on a regular basis. Of course, ensuring that we don't miss out on anything and we don't miss out on any important mandated documentation. Um, for data storage and organizing data, a structured filing system can be created. I'm talking about the manual filing system only over here, where unique anonymous case IDs can be used instead of using the names of either the aggrieved person or anybody else's name, and organizing those files in maybe a chronological order or by even case status. So, for example, the case status could be under investigation or resolved. All of those can be segregated. One can also use color coded folders or dividers to separate active cases from the closed ones. Maintaining a master logbook that can be stored separately to track case details, like maybe filing dates, timelines, the outcomes of those investigations. IC members can also explore, dedicatedly having one of the members who is responsible for this purpose, and maybe others can audit it. This is one of the options that can be explored by organizations, and regularly auditing the system to ensure the records are accurate and up to date. Also, if possible, when the documents are no longer required as per the legal retention guidelines, they could be shredded off also. The older files could be shredded off, primarily from the data confidentiality perspective. And also, I would like to say that, it's very important for us to constantly remind and train the IC members for the importance of handling the physical files discreetly when it comes to the physical management system and maintaining confidentiality around it. In fact, just to say, just to add here that a lot of large organizations in the ITES sector, banking sector, they are, going in for automated system these days, so that the confidentiality aspect is not breached, and it's a much easier way of data collection and data organization.
Thank you, Monica, for sharing with us such innovative ideas on data collection. Moving on to Priya, I would like to know from you, why is filing an annual report important under the PoSH Act?
Okay. So, as Monica said, that we are mandated to file the annual report to the district officer. IC is supposed to be filing it. Let's circle it back to the intent of the as we spoke. Why the policy. Let's talk about a couple of minutes and spend here on why even annual filing or a reporting is mandated. Again, the basic intent being accountability and transparency. So the report, let's look at the report, provides a record for all the complaints received, investigations conducted, action taken. So it reassures employees that the company is serious about creating a safe workplace, and an authority is keeping a watch at a certain level. So, of course, accountability and transparency is one key factor of the basic intent behind the annual filing. And of course, it is mandated by the PoSH Act that is there, and the intent is for sure, as we spoke about, demonstrating a commitment to prevent such kind of incidences and having a watch at a certain level. So then comes after we meet the basic intent of accountability and transparency, there are obviously organizations that go and wish to go beyond the checkbox of compliance. So when we talk about it, of course, it also helps in monitoring and evaluation. Understand with let's take a basic example of when we have a review or we do have something, an exam, you do a preparation behind it, right? Certainly, an annual filing report also helps you to keep the certain records, in a certain way and mandated. What does it helps in? It, of course, helps in a monitoring and evaluation. So if an organization after filing also has an intent of actually building a real impact, or I would say, uphold the act in a real spirit, then they would need to go back and monitor their own records of how the policy or the steps taken been effective by analyzing the trends and the pattern. So of course your reporting does help you in identifying those, and if there are improvements and proactive measures need to be taken, you can do basis the filing report. You see, for last 4 or 5 years, how have been the pattern, if it been the complaints being curbed or the reduction and all, and how these surveys are done also basis that when the filings are done by the organizations, there are trend studies that happen, that what kind of sector is trending. It helps in that. And of course, having said that, it promotes continuous improvement, on documenting annual data helps organizations reflect on, their training programs, update policy, or enhance the support system. And bottom line being, it builds trust with employee. What as employer you're supposed to do is build psychological safe workplace, and you can only build that when the employee can trust you back, right? So it reassures a filing of such kind of reports, solving them on time and curbing them, of course, fosters a culture of trust and safety. So knowing that their concern will be documented and addressed and taken seriously, it does help build a level of trust with the employees. So I would say that it should not be taken as just legal formality. It for sure is a tool for accountability and continuous improvement. Right.
Okay. So now that I've asked you on why, I have a follow-up question for you, Priya. Like, what are exactly the annual reporting requirements under the law or under the PoSH Act?
So as Monica also touched base, typically, annual report is to be done from a calendar year, from a January to December 31st, right? And the submission happens in the period, the next month of next month of the following year. So January, typically 1st to 31st, you'll end up filing the records for the previous calendar year. And it should include the number of sexual harassments filed in the year. It should include the number of complaints disposed during the calendar year. It should include the number of complaints pending more than 90 days, because then the time span goes beyond. So it should talk about how many cases are still pending and, beyond 90 days. Then the nature of action being taken. Is it being just taken? It helps assess the, authorities assess that are you just doing a lip service, or you genuinely, there have been, if the seriousness. So again, I would go back to some basics of, measures and remedial. What is the seriousness of the action, case and incident, and accordingly, of course, the action is being taken by the organization. So probably the nature of action needs to be defined certain way, and the number of trainings and awareness programs done in the calendar year. It should include how many done for employees, what all done for employee, for the IC, because IC works here as has the authority of a civil court, and they're most powerful in terms of they are the one who would decide that probably what kind of case it is, what is even the recommendation is decided. So of course we need to work on their capability building and empower the IC. So it should include that what are the awareness sessions done for IC capability building as well. And of course, in all this, confidentiality is of utmost importance, but nowhere we give out the name or a detailed documentation of what were the cases and who were the people. Of course, it has been aggregated as an overall statistics without disclosing any identities. I hope that suffices what you intended to ask in this,
Yes,
right?
definitely. Thank you, Priya. Thank you, Monica and Priya, for discussing the annual report. Now we will move to a round 3, which is on challenges and best practices. In this round, basically, we will explore the various practical aspects of overcoming challenges and also implementing few best practices to ensure that we have a seamless PoSH compliance. So, Monica, according to you, which mandatory requirement under the PoSH Act 2013 is the most challenging one, and how do you overcome it?
Oh, challenges. There could be so many, right?
Yeah.
We have some, Priya, I can see that smile on Priya's face, and we have so many experts and maybe some IC members also with us. There are quite a few. But the top of the mind challenge that comes to my mind is about maintaining confidentiality. So that's something that, about 4 5 years ago, when I was a part of a corporate and I was a presiding officer for the committee, one of the cases I want to share, one instance that there was this lady who was going through harassment, and we were investigating into the case. Every time she wanted to communicate something with us, and bring in somebody as a supporter for her, they would not be witnesses, they would not be anyone who had visibility to it, but just to gain that support of others, she would CC people in emails. And it became very difficult for us to sort of drill it to her that it's supposed to be confidential, you're supposed to discuss it with the IC committee and with the right people. It became very challenging. So confidentiality, I think, becomes one of the biggest challenge. Breaches can happen whether accidentally or deliberately. It can erode trust. It can stigmatize complainants. It can even lead to legal repercussions for the organization. It becomes that challenging. Uh, all the more challenges happen when we are conducting investigations, and when we have to call out for witnesses, when we conduct those meetings in glass cabins, where you see the IC committee on one side and an employee on the other side, it becomes evident that it's a sexual harassment case that is getting discussed. So I think one of the ways in which it can be overcome to a great extent is, I think, adopting a systemic approach to this problem. Because sexual harassment by itself is a systemic problem, right? So to address challenges around it, we also need to adopt systemic approach to resolve the problems. So one of the ways in which confidentiality can be sort of addressed could be by introducing NDAs, non-disclosure agreements, which all the parties involved in the case need to sign. Okay, it could be including the complainant, the respondent, that is the alleged perpetrator, the witnesses, and of course, IC members are required to sign an NDA anyway. All of these parties involved can sign an NDA, which can formalize their commitment to privacy and will discourage information leaks. In fact, many organizations are adopting it. Large entities, I don't want to name any entities, but they are adopting NDAs, which helps in sort of reiterating the message that, hey, you're required to maintain confidentiality around it. And so signing the NDA really helps. Another way could be, again, I spoke about it, the complaint management system, where it's a secured way of maintaining your documentation and the entire communication trail. That could be another way of minimizing the risk of sensitive information leakage. Regular training of the IC committee, again, pertaining to knowing the importance and significance of confidentiality. And we cannot ignore the importance of sensitizing the employees through the sensitization programs around maintaining confidentiality. Especially if they have themselves gone through a sexual harassment in that case, or if they are seeing something around it, as a bystander. Communicating it to the right people, that is the IC, will be important, instead of gossiping around it and making a big noise about something, becomes very, very crucial. So yeah, it needs to be addressed in a systematic manner, is what I feel.
Thank you, Monica. So, Priya, my question for you is what innovative strategies have you seen the organizations adopt to cultivate a workplace safety and ensure compliance with the Act?
Sure. Very important question. So firstly, I would start with one very basic thing, and what as champions of safe workplace or advocates of safe workplace, we must understand and live by a fact that any buildings, building a safe workplace or environment goes beyond mandatory requirements. Creating safety at workplace definitely starts with providing psychological safety, and it needs continuous work with cultural shifts. We just mandating or complying to the tick boxes of what is mandated cannot bring complete psychological safety net, and it cannot bring complete cultural shift. So it is continuous work. So one, it has to be proactive engagement with stakeholders, continuous awareness and sensitization to create a supportive environment, right? Coming to the question of innovative strategies or what has been adopted or can be, I would typically come up with certain practices that we at Stare or also have implemented with some of our organizations. and they are tried and tested that they work, though the shift has to be organic and it takes some time, but a continuous, again, as I said, continuous work is the mantra. It is not an overnight shift or work that you can build a workplace safety and a culture that thrives. So important few things can be getting pulse surveys done, any regular anonymous feedback to gauge workplace safety and culture can be of great help. So it has to, build in an environment to go back and continuously check your own systems. Getting the feedback from people. It could be anonymous feedback because, of course, then people do come out and share more openly. So that can be one important thing to check and, build a baseline for, to build your strategies. Then, of course, it might sound very basic, but we have seen broken I would say programs or a lack of robust awareness on sensitization programs. Again, don't do it just for tick mark activity. Build programs that can actually bring cultural shift. Right, talking about probably gender sensitization to bring in the changes, along with the PoSH program. So restricting it just to PoSH requirements may not help in long term, but yes, we build on overall bring to a culture shift, reiterating bystander role, gender sensitization. So I think these are small interventions to be done timely over a period of time that can surely help to bring a cultural shift. Then peer support program is something we see that has worked well, making some PoSH champions within the team for decentralized awareness. They can act as first responder as well. So we do talk about confidentiality, but at the same time, we can build programs where there are few people, even the IC people only, can be those PoSH champions, right? I was talking about those kind of peer support programs that can be there as first responders. They can guide people where needed. Then, of course, gamified scenario workshops where role plays can be done and understand this different perspective. And IC procedures do help from monotonous training programs or, basic structures. One important thing then again that Monica also touch based was on awareness posters. And I would not just keep it up to posters, then probably I would have a strong behavioral changing communication campaigns, I would like to name it as, where we are not just telling about these are the IC members, that helps at a certain way, and we need to include those information for sure. And how supportive can be this is that it makes you think about your own actions. So behavioral changing communications campaigns that we have seen work very well. Where you're questioning the very basics sometimes, and they're hard hitting as well. Then, of course, victim and support, witness support programs, helplines can be one area where, can help provide a kind of a safety net to victim and witness. And of course, a very important part, this all will fall in place when we see a leadership accountability, leader-led program and workshop for sure help very well, because it's like you walk the talk, you top down culture with. So I think these are the few things that typically work very well. Even the IC, quarterly meetings are there, reported to the leadership on the IC activity and cases. Then the leader should be interested in that. So I'm not saying we are attaching it to an employer, but at the same time, it helps the leader also build accountability at somewhere. So reinforce the importance of consistent compliance and cultural changes. These are the few probably things that we've seen impact well in such programs.
Thank you, Priya. Thank you both for discussing few challenges that organizations can face and also few innovative best practices also. Now we will move on to a next round, which is basically on what would you do? It is an interactive round here. And so what I'll do is I'll present some workplace scenarios. Please note that you have to respond from an employee's perspective. And once I put the scenarios down, you can use your chat box to share how would you handle this situation if you were the employee in this case. So you just use your chat box to reply. So basically here, the audience should respond to the scenarios. And after the audience response, I'll just move on to ask one of the panelists to answer one query each. So the first scenario is when you witness a harassment. So for example, you are an employee and you overhear a colleague making inappropriate remarks to another coworker. So the person being harassed looks very, very uncomfortable but doesn't react. What would you do in such a situation? Audience, please feel free to use the chat box to respond. So Pius says that she'll encourage the person to report the incidents to the IC. Okay. Shimoy mentions intervene and ask the person to stop. Sumalatha says that we can make the employee aware of the PoSH process and reach out to IC. Loitya says have a conversation with the person and recommend them to read the PoSH policy. Okay. Monica, so I'd like to take this question to Monica. Like, Monica, what do you think an employee should do in such a scenario?
Yeah, so I think a lot of people in the chat box have, addressed this. And the first response is about, I will encourage the person to report the incident to the IC. Yes, so human beings are very complex, right? So we have to look at the situation, the gravity of the situation, and then maybe take a call. One of the ways could be by just encouraging the person to speak up about it and approach the IC and do it. Maybe the person has some hesitance or hesitation with regards to doing it. Could be, there could be a lot of background to that. Keeping that in mind, uh, I would not recommend the person, the bystander, to go ahead and counsel the perpetrator. Instead, I would suggest that the person brings it to the notice of maybe an HR person or the IC member, so that it could be looked into. But the first answer that comes to my mind would be that encouraging the person, the victim in this case, to go ahead and talk about it, maybe even accompany the person to lodge a complaint. Yeah, I think that could be my two bits on this. Maybe Priya can add something here.
So I completely agree to it. While the procedures and policies, everything is in place, but as Monica also highlighted, human mind is complex. When we come to work, we all bring our whole self to the work, right? And we are all different, and people have different way of responding or communicating. So one, we have to understand that it might have not been intended. While the law says, of course, it's the impact that matters and not the intent. But at the same time, we need to be careful about that. Has the person habit of doing this? And certainly, have a little more background to it. And of course, at the first instance, as a bystander, if I see, I would, tell that person to maybe go ahead and talk. For sure, there is a certain responsibility on, every person. Even the men carry, even the women carry, that responsibility, or whosoever is the, aggrieved person, carry a responsibility of first telling that, the discomfort is there. This is not something which is a welcomed thing. So, of course, the first ownership lies on the person itself to go and to talk to the person. And if there are repeats of something, then of course you're free to go to and file a complaint or whatever your policy says. But at the first instance, and maybe what comes to my mind is just be open and talk, understand that why sudden that behavior has happened, and maybe that can help. And just notice if there are more instances and with other people, then probably take an action.
Yeah. Thank you both. So we'll move to the next scenario, that is regarding unclear policy information. I'll copy paste in the chat box also. So if you have recently joined a company and you're not sure about where to find the information about the PoSH policy or how to report an issue, so what steps should you take to ensure that you are informed? Josna says that it should be included as a part of onboarding induction. Yes. Anything else? Part of induction and check well with HR as well. Elizabeth says this. Lothia says, reach out to HR team. If I'm not sure who within HR, I would reach out to IC member if that is available in the policy. Yeah. So ideally, the common responses, like ideally it should be in the induction, but if it is not there in the induction, then best is to check with the HR or your manager. Okay. So Monica, what would you suggest? Like what should be done in this situation?
Well, we have, very smart audience members here, and they have put forth their views, which as an employee, even I would want to, talk to either my manager first. If my manager is not aware, then I would want to maybe go to an HR. Would I really go to an IC member? I'm not too sure. But yeah, that will be a great thing to do. Having said so, to mitigate this, of course, organizations need to ensure that this awareness is a part of the induction program. In fact, many companies are putting up posters or communication campaigns are run across, which includes, putting up communication even in the induction rooms. Yeah, and interview rooms, induction rooms. So it begins, our responsibility begins right from there. But as employees, of course, we can be curious, we can keep an open mind. And since anyway, there's so much being spoken about creating safe workspaces for everybody. As employees, we can take that baton in our hands and find out who our IC committee members are, ask questions about the complaint mechanism, redressal mechanism. Let's say if you have joined as a manager yourself, you could be experiencing something within your team. So you should know that, what is the complaint mechanism or the redressal mechanism that my team members can use. So being aware, keeping an open mind, asking the right questions to right people becomes important. And all of us need to take that responsibility and not just leave it to the authorities, so that we are able to create that safe workspace for everyone.
Priya, what would you suggest?
No, I
Thanks,
think
Monica.
I totally agree with what's being said and what's been shared over chat as well. First of all, the very first important part in this step is inclusion in the induction, and I've seen some organizations, one of the IC, or they do not only include as a policy, but they do obviously as a whole induction program and take them through the policy itself, so that make them informed about when and where and what to do. If that is not being done, for sure, the first Spock being, my manager, possibly I would want to check. Or if there is a buddy system or somebody, you are attached with in the organizations, many, with new joinees, people do have a buddy system or a team member that is being attached. Maybe if I have that comfort, I can check with that person that where can I find, information to this. And many organizations do have, part of intranet, etc., their HRMS, then possibly, of course, it's expected to have all the policies in place there. So in case that is also not there, then of course you can check with your manager and be aware. Maybe reaching out to direct IC might not be the best of the case here, because you need to take a well-informed case and then reach out to an IC or filing a complaint. So first point is, of course, if not conducted in it, included in induction, then a buddy or a HR manager could be a best person to answer that and make you aware.
Thank you, Priya. So we are towards the end of the session, so we will just go towards the last round, that is the key takeaways. As we wrap up today's session, I'd like to ask each panelist to share one key takeaway from today's discussion. Monica, would you like to go first?
Okay, there are a lot of takeaways actually. I'm wondering which one to pick.
Which one most important according to you?
Okay. So, yeah, I think, having a systemic approach to creating a safe workspace becomes important. Priya has been re-emphasizing on culture of accountability, ownership. I think I totally resonate with that, because any change will begin with self, right? So for an organization to have a psychologically safe and a safe workplace for everybody, all of us need to take that approach of being accountable, being responsible, and taking that ownership in our own hands. So as individuals, since your last question was around what would you do to bring, to get that awareness, asking the right questions, keeping an open mind, and of course as an organization, not shying away from delivering their duties in terms of creating a safe workspace. So yeah, that's what is coming up for me now, Hipsita.
Okay. Priya, what according to you is one key takeaway from today's
And I
discussion?
think the session has been great in terms of even pinpointed, do's, which has been shared by Monica very well, whether it be in terms of data or, understanding the three pillars of how, the act. I think in totality, what we discussed is, and if we take, see the underlying, it is about making interventions. If you make the right interventions as stated, it's just not about the compliance. Possibly making those systemic and continuous intervention can lead to and will lead to a very organic culture shift, and that being the underline of the intent, of course, I understand, of the webinar as well, and the session as well, that the all the interventions that are stated, if you see, or shared during the session as well, talks about implementing the law or the act in the right spirit as well. You do these interventions, and it cannot happen that there is no culture shift or a baseline shift that happens in the organization. But the key lies to actually each one to own their own action firstly, and of course leadership also. So what is the intent behind? Are we really wanting to make a shift in the right spirit? That being the key for me, and always that's been key for me. Are we meeting the intent and doing it in the right spirit?
So just
Okay.
to add to this, Priya, what's coming up for me is that for an organization, the intent matters, and for the aggrieved, uh,
Impact.
it's the impact. Yeah.
Yeah, of course, of course. So if done in the right intent, of course, the impact would be there on ground, right? So I think that one important takeaway.
Thank you both. So the same question for our audience today, like any key takeaway from today's session, feel free to use share your thoughts in the chat box. Shimoy shares that the QR code idea by Monica. Okay. Anybody has any questions also? Audience, if you have any questions from our panelists, please feel free to ask. Monica or Priya, anybody can take up this question by Payal. So the question is, could you ask the panel, okay, how can we ensure that the women colleague feels comfortable to return to work after a proven complaint when the consequence is that the respondent has been terminated? So in a way, people know that there was something wrong and rumors flow.
Okay. So I'll just clarify. Monica, would you want to go ahead and address it first? Or probably
Please proceed. Please
both
proceed.
can add whatever comes to our mind. So here we are saying, if I just correct me wherever I'm wrong, it says that one is coming back to work, and the consequence has been that the respondent has been terminated. So what is exactly the question? Are we trying to say that making the women or the aggrieved person comfortable, is she itself not comfortable? Then I would just like to add a couple of things. One, feel the victory and head your head high, because one, if the wrong has been wrongdoing being settled and person has been terminated because the actions were not right, why are you not feeling comfortable? You have set an example by raising a voice and setting a tone right. So, and the organization, you should feel supported, that the organization has supported you well in taking the right action. So I understand the initial discomfort while returning the work, but I think it's more of a psychological support that you are looking for. Then in that case, you can reach out to if people are making you around uncomfortable, then have an open chat with your team or certain set of people. If they're looking you in another light, then have an open discussion with them. Not too sure why it should make one person still uncomfortable when you know that the person has been terminated and the organization has taken the step what it required to. So there has to be some more background to it. What is making so uncomfortable for me or for Monica probably to comment? But I think the person has been given the kind of disciplinary action, and it should not make you uncomfortable. If it is people around, then go ahead and talk and get that comfort. If there is anything beyond which is bothering, then of course it needs little more talking and counseling and support.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Does it answers your question? If there is anything,
yes, it does. In fact, it's more about, how do you, I think, while, you said talk to people, we can't give so many details to people. So that becomes, how as an organization we ensure that the environment goes back to normal after such a big, incident of termination has happened. Um,
I would just like to take a minute more on that and, answer that. Let's see, if people are anyways aware the termination has happened, then you know that people know the cause of the termination. And it shouldn't be bringing any, it should not be making any, I would not say it will not make difference. Of course, it will make a difference. But at the same time, if they are aware, then why should it stop you from discussing it and making the ground right and telling? Again, the ownership of making an environment right or correct also lies in you. Talk about it. If there is a psychological barrier in communicating the same thing, or make, the ownership also lies on us. Take your time, but make a comfort area, make a buddy whom you can talk to it, and probably it can percolate down into team. Talk to the manager if it is within the team. So I know the details cannot be given off, but if people are aware that so and so incidents have happened and it's been terminated with that, then the cause is very much out, right? And if it is not out it in a certain way, then I would not want to shun away the problem, but at the same time sometimes we overthink about certain things or a problem because we are conscious about it. So just sit with yourself and understand that, is it me who's making myself more conscious, or it is genuinely around the people who are making you uncomfortable. So probably
thank you.
more discussion around
Yeah, I agree, because it's like, I mean, from HR or from part of the IC, it's more in the mind about how we make things comfortable rather than, them going into details of this. But I agree with you, and I really like the first portion that you said that, walk in with your head high, head held high, because it's something right that you've done. So thank you. I mean, it makes, just helps me feel better.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Payal, for asking this
With you.
question. Thank you, Priya, for answering. We have another question from Sumalata. Apart from termination, is there any other way to handle malicious complaints? Monica, could you please take that up?
Establishing that there is a malicious complaint that has been registered, I think most of the organizations are adopting termination because they want to set a precedence. Are there any other ways? Okay. I think one of the ways could be, counseling sessions for the person, right? Where the person is counseled further, and we need to understand what really went into having this person put up a malicious complaint altogether. Um, but would that really be effective with regards to stopping such, such instances, being occurring in future? I'm not too sure. Um, Priya, would you like to add anything here? Because I feel that could be one of the best ways of dealing with malicious complaints or counseling.
When we do an IC training, typically, there's a lot to be covered in a malicious complaint because there's a lot of background to it. Has this been a continuous, a habit of somebody? It's been a intent of. So there are a lot of, I would say, conditions that why a malicious complaint could be done if it's the intent. So there's a lot to be spoken about it. But I think even this important part should be covered in the policy. As we spoke, the very first question, what should be the key elements? One key important element, again, I would probably got missed, or it's important to look here, is how to deal with malicious complaints. One is that. So other than termination, I think termination becomes the last resort. First, and typically what has been included in policies also that we have reviewed or recommended is the first, if it has been the very first time, understand first the intent, why it has been done. And if it is a repeated or a complaint, then of course termination is, because then it is about, we are talking about a habit, and we don't want people with such habits or mindsets to be around. One can be possibly counseling, and it can be not a demotion also doesn't work well, because then again the person is in a mindset of giving it back to the organization or the people around. But possibly understanding the intent is important. Why the malicious complaint? Has the person been done anything with wrong? So rather than taking some other route, they filed a malicious complaint. So one, intent has to be clear. And second, I think a certain level of counseling and keeping a tab on this person's activities within the team and outside the team shall be very important as well. Termination being the last resort. If it has been a continuous habit, then of course you don't want to have such team members in the team, for sure.
Thank you, Priya. Sumalata, I hope this answers your question. As we are towards the end of the session today, we will wrap up today's session. A big thank you to both our panelists, Monica and Priya, for the valuable insights on all our rounds, and to all the participants also for being part of today's session. We'll look forward to have you on our next session also, the participants basically. Until then, let's continue together to create safer and more respectful workplaces. Have a wonderful day. Thank you everyone for being a part of today's session.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ipsita, for a wonderful session. And thank you so much, Monica, for your wonderful insights. And thanks a lot, all the participants, for their wonderful insights and
Thank
questions.
you, Priya. Thank you, Ipsita. And to the Lockubator team for arranging this. And thank you, everybody, for participating.
I think it's a great initiative. And, even if you're able to bring change or certain interventions through such kind of discussions and open dialogues, I think it makes a lot of difference at the workplaces. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.